G'day and welcome back to another DBZ Dokkan Battle video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the AGL Android 17 and taking a look at how good he is at 100% in the hidden potential system and obviously with his easy aim. Now Android 17 is from the GT saga, so he's actually a bit more limited in categories than an actual Android 17. And he's also not on GT bosses, which is kind of weird. But it is what it is. He's an AGL type lead, it's nothing too crazy. He raises his attack and defense on his super attack, which is probably the most important aspect. He has attack and defense of 120% and an additional attack, obviously when performing a super attack. He will also gain an additional 170% defense when there is an Android 17 or a unit that has 17 in their name attacking in the same turn, which is very crucial. I do believe crit builds are going to be best in them for offense, but if you want to get that double defense raise for the turn, it should be okay. His links are Android Assault, Fear and Faith, Twin Terrors, Infinite Energy, Fierce Battle. So pretty decent stuff. Obviously he's on a couple categories, but mainly Corroded Body and Mind, Target Goku, androids and artificial life forms. He is pretty decent, I would say. He has around 270-280k, obviously not fully link leveled. When he has an Android 17 in the turn, what that means is when he fires a super attack, his defense will be over 300,000, which is pretty good, all things considered. Remember, he also hits some pretty decent attack stats. We're talking 4.5 million, 5 million. So honestly not too bad. If you couple that with the fact that he provides attack and defense buffs in the same turn, I think overall he is a pretty solid unit. I wouldn't say he's insane, but I do think he's actually got a pretty decent foundation upon being run in a team. I think overall he does a good job. I think he has a very good kind of basis upon which to work from. And I think he links up pretty decently with some other Android 17 units. I think he's received quite a big buff in terms of viability, being able to be run alongside the strength Android 17 and 18, which is always pretty good. Now of course, he isn't necessarily tanky enough for all of the super hard stages, but if you were to fully link level him out and put defensive equipment on him, you could get his starting defense to over 300k. Which all things considered is pretty good. Like over 300k starting defense from a unit that's this old, not like super old, but you know, that has gone through a couple metas, which feels like every 6 months nowadays, is pretty good. Especially if he raises his defense, you know, if he fires a double super attack, then he could be close to the 400k mark, which I think overall is pretty decent stuff. You know, it's really good for a unit that's, you know, not necessarily a designated first star tank or anything. Couple that with the fact that he brings attack and defensive buffs, and I think overall you have a unit that's really multifunctional. I think for me, I like him best as a floater. I know it's not necessarily the, you know, best utilization of him, but I do think if you have an Android 17 or a unit that can proc the 17 portion of the passive, then running him as a floater is always pretty good. You have decent start turn defense, you have very solid after super defense, and he can provide some floating, you know, support numbers whilst also doing some very decent damage. So I would say overall, like, he basically is a pretty solid unit. Without getting too deep into it, I think he's quite reliable. I think he's good in multiple positions. Wouldn't say he's a designated first star unit, but I do think he's got some room to grow. His big hindrance ultimately is that he does to a certain extent suffer a little bit, because he obviously, you know, needs an Android 17, and right now I would say maybe the AGL Super 17 and the Strength Android 17 Duo card are the only real other Android 17 units that can hold their own. And even though the Int Hellfighter 17 is also really good, Int Hellfighter 17 is also a floating unit, so you're very unlikely to run the two of them together, although they do share a lot of links. In terms of links, the important ones are Android Assault. Infinite Energy is also really good if you can get it. Twin Terrors is also pretty good. Fear and Faith is a solid key link that isn't Android related. Fierce Battle is fairly easy to get. It's just Nightmare that's maybe a bit of a problem. If you are prioritizing links for this guy, if you want him to be a main rotation unit, then you are probably looking at Android Assault and then whatever else you can get, because I do think that's basically his best defensive link. But if you can get like Twin Terrors and Infinite Energy, for example, then you are basically ready to go. So this is just going to depend a little bit on what you're able to pull together, but overall there should be enough capacity here for you to make things work and give yourself a decent foundation. With that being said, honestly, I think he's a pretty good unit. I think he does some pretty decent numbers, and if you're looking for someone that can augment your GT Bosses team, well, not really that one, but I guess if you're looking for someone to augment your Android team, then I think he's a good call. But that's it from me. See you guys in the next one. Till then, bye.